Hey, Libby, you're muted. You were muted for that, Libby.
Sorry, everybody, it doesn't tell me. So I am gonna just walk everybody through Tidbits today. We've got a couple different people who are gonna present for about 3 minutes each. And we have a few with slides and a few without. We'll start with Nicole Swenson, who's gonna talk briefly about Matsu Elodia.
Hello again, everyone. Nicole Swenson from Trinidad Tribal Conservation District. I'm actually kind of filling in for Dan Coleman today. He had a conflict with his schedule with a meeting that he couldn't miss. So I'm just I only have a few sentences just to give a quick update of the status of Elodia, and then I'd like to talk about the Matsu Elodia task force as well. So DNR has been in implementing the eradication efforts at Elodia infestations in Alexander and Sucker lakes, and also in Big Lake and other lakes, but I'll just talk about the Matsu specific ones. And eradication efforts are going really well. It's actually pretty exciting to see. Sucker Lake is really pretty clear of Elodia at this point. And Alexander Lake in the center of the lake, landowners and Dan were saying is about, in the 90% of being taken care of in the center of the lakes. Where it gets challenging is on the outside of the lakes, where the vegetation, starts to mix more with the native vegetation on the edges. And then also down, unfortunately, in the sloughs. So the moving water, especially below Alexander Creek, are going to be the next challenge. But efforts are going well. And if you have questions about eradication efforts, Dan Coleman at DNR would be the best person to reach out to for that. Since 2018, I believe, we at TTCD have been leading it started as Alexander Sucker Lake task force, Elodia task force, to kind of help DNR with all of the things that go into a project that large, including surveys, outreach, getting funding, all of that. And now that's really, the ball is rolling, we've shifted our focus broader. So instead of Alexander and Sucker Lakes only, now the Matsu Elodia task force. So our focus really is just helping wherever we can, but mainly it's doing annual surveys of remote lakes, and then and also outreach initiatives. So if anyone is interested in joining that group, I think expanding our geographical scope to a larger region means we can have more partners in that. So please do reach out to me. And I'll put my email in the chat there if you want to join in on those meetings and learn a bit more. And I need to wrap up, so thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Next up, we've got Margaret Stern, who is going to speak from the Susitna River Coalition.
Hi, everyone. My name is Margaret Stern, and I'm with the Susitna River Coalition. I'll be talking about a few of the heavier things that the SRC works on in the next phase. But right now, I'd like to tell you about some of the ways that we celebrate the watershed. So starting this Friday, November 19th, we are starting our 5th annual Wild Sioux Feast, celebrating the foods that swam, flew, grew, and walked through the Susitna watershed. Now, this is a virtual event because of COVID, but there are a variety of ways to get involved. And I will drop a link in the chat here for registration. After you register, you can submit recipes, take pictures of your foods that you harvested in the watershed, and get involved in a variety of different ways. Even giving to your local food pantry is a part of this. So at the end of this, we compile a Wild Sioux Feast cookbook. And last year we had a lot of great entries, from porcupine sausage to blueberry bear, just a lot of fun things. So I'd really like for y'all to get involved. It runs from November 19th to December 3rd. In addition to that, we are still holding our winter speaker series virtually. There is an event tonight talking about creativity in the watershed with bush pilot and artist Katie Ryder. In December, we will be hosting an event talking about caribou management in the watershed with fish and game biologist Heidi Hatcher. And in January, we will be talking about archaeology in the watershed with Dr. Katie Krasinski and exploring her work. So that's all I have for right now. I hope that you guys can get involved with this project and with the Wild Sioux Feast. And I will pass this back to Libby. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. That sounds like a fun event. Next up, we have Andy Couch, and I'm going to pull up your slides, Andy. And go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, this is Andy Couch. Greetings to everybody. Glad you could be here. I'm talking briefly about the Lower Susitna personal use salmon fishery. It was created in 2020 by the Alaska Board of Fisheries. And the fishery is located downstream from Deshka Landing, about 18 or 20 miles down below the mouth of the Yentna River, down below Susitna Station. And there's a couple slides on the picture that depict what the fishery's like. There was a fear at the time the fishery was created that there could be a substantially large salmon harvest that may impact things severely. There is also another fear that the place could be overrun with users and there could be environmental damage like trash dumped or just stuff like that. But anyway, these pictures depict typically what you see in that fishery. I've been down there 2 times in 2020, and then I was down there 3 times, 3 different days this year, 2021. The fishery's only open 6 days, 6 to 7 days, maybe a year. It's only open on Wednesdays and Saturdays from July 10th to July 31st. As you can see in the pictures, there's not too many people around. Sometimes it gets a little bit busier for a few hours, but there's a lot of river to fish and not very many people. As far as the concern that too many salmon might be harvested, in the first year, the department's figures for harvest were that there was 377 days of participation. I assume that's permit days. That's not very many when you consider how many the Fish Creek, Kasilof, or Kenai get. In those days, there was a harvest of 2,296 sockeye, 747 pink salmon, 538 coho salmon, 68 chum salmon, and 22 Chinook salmon were also reported. The Chinook are not supposed to be harvested. But that whole total is 3,671 fish out of 377 permit days. So that's a harvest of about 10 fish per permit day fished. And as far as the any kind of trash or anything, when I was down there, I didn't see anybody acting irresponsibly or anything dumped or anything like that. And there was, just like the pictures at the start that you were viewing there was not very many participants. There was areas of the fishery where you could go and have it all to yourself. So anyway, that's what I know about it. There's if you did a Google search for Lower Susitna River personal use fishery, there's several things you'd see there. I wrote a couple articles, but there's one observations from the Lower Susitna River personal use dip net fishery in the Frontiersman that you can get to by you doing a Google search, and there's quite a bit of information there. Just wanted to make people aware of this. This is one more way to connect the people in the area to the salmon. And I assume this fishery will grow, but it's a pretty good boat ride downriver. So it's been kind of limited to start with. If anybody wants any more information, feel welcome to contact me. My information is in the booklet, the online booklet that Grant sent out ahead of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. That's interesting to hear about. See, next up, we've got a short video from the Akutna River Restoration Coalition. And I'm going to play it and read a short message from them while it's playing, since there's just natural sounds. The Akutna River got a big boost this fall when utility operators released water from the diversion dam at the outlet of Akutna Lake for the first time in 66 years. 2021 was the first year of studies to help determine what mitigation actions are required for the Akutna hydroelectric project. As part of an in-stream flow study, for a little more than 3 weeks, water was released in increments of 150 cubic feet per second CFS, 75 CFS, and 50 CFS. And the Akutna River briefly was reborn, tracing its historic path to the ocean unimpeded. The brief return of water helped mobilize some of the sediment that accumulated over the decades behind the defunct lower Akutna Dam, which was removed in 2017 and 2018. This initial flushing flow had no negative effects on downstream infrastructure. The temporary water release was a success for the Akutna River Restoration Coalition and was met with great excitement by area residents. Field studies to inform mitigation process will continue in 2022, and the agreed upon mitigation measures must be initiated by 2027. Follow the restoration of the Akutna River and find additional photos and videos of the water release at akutnariver.org. Okay, we're going to move on to our next tidbit, which is going to be Marcus Geist. Marcus, go ahead and hop on.
Okay, thank you, Libby. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you
Okay,
fine.
great. So I'm working with UAA's Alaska Center for Conservation Science. And so right now, the 100-odd projects that the partnership has funded over the last 14 or so years are represented on a web mapper that you can get to off of the partnership webpage. And it looks a lot like this panel in the middle. It's just kind of your traditional web mapper where there's a dot for each project. I'm presenting today on kind of sort of the first evolution of that, and then also with a plug for sort of the second evolution. And so the first one would be a dashboard. And so that allows us to kind of interact with the projects by type, as you see over in the left. by strategies. So those are the strategies that are put forth in the partnership's strategic plan. And then there's a means to sort of look at projects by year or by recipient. And then if we can move to the next page. Okay, and so this dashboard is also interactive. So for those of you who would just continue to converse in English or Denaina or you know, whatever your favorite language is, rather than SQL in terms of developing custom queries and things, you can just click on, say, in this case, the conservation data sets, and the map is responsive, and you're just looking at the conservation projects. Or if you wanted to look at the restoration projects, you could do that. Similarly, the chart that was on the right-hand side in the previous slide that had the strategic action plans is also responsive and connected to the map. And then across the bottom, you see sort of by year and by recipient of partnership sponsored projects. So that's sort of the evolution that's sort of already taken place. That sort of second generation evolution was hinted at if you saw my colleague Anjanette Steer's presentation about riparian data as an attempt to take what right now we see just sort of a one-to-one, like one project, one dot on the map. But we know that most of the time those projects are much more complex. As we saw in Becky's presentation, there wasn't just one monitoring location on the Deshka, there were multiple locations, and most of us want to consume that in something beyond just the PowerPoint slides that were presented today. We might actually want access to the digital, spatial, informative data. And so that's sort of what we're looking to do, particularly for partners who don't have necessarily the digital infrastructure to support that. If anybody's interested in either of these projects, feel free to contact me. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Marcus. Great to see the updates on those maps. Our last tidbit today is Matt LaCroix with the EPA.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. For those that don't know me, as Libby indicated, I work for EPA in the 404 program, primarily reviewing proposed projects that require authorization from the Corps of Engineers. It's great to see all the presentations today and all the great work that's being done. And great to see that people were able to get out in the field this summer. So all those people in the field collecting data, it would be great if they could collect it consistently. One of the limitations that we have for doing field work involving data collection for streams in Alaska is a lack of regionally specific assessment methods or assessment tools that can be consistently applied by field staff from different agencies or different stakeholder groups. And so over the last 2 years, a group, an interagency staff with stakeholder support has been working with the Salcha Delta Soil and Water Conservation District and the contractor stream mechanics to develop a stream quantification tool. And that tool has been completed. There's going to be 2 webinars to roll out that tool and introduce it to stakeholders in the first part of December. So the tool was regionalized for interior Alaska, so not the Mat-Su, but interior Alaskan area where there was sufficient baseline data, which primarily came from BLM assessment data in the interior. But the group is looking to potentially develop similar tools for other places in the state, including the Mat-Su. So if you're interested in looking at that tool, which is available, I'll put the web link where you can find the tool and review it. If you're interested in participating in the webinars, they're going to be December 7th and December 8th. So there's going to be one webinar for agency staff and another for other stakeholders. If you've got a conflict and you have to attend the opposite one, that's not a problem. But if you're interested in participating in the webinars, I will put my contact information in the chat as well, and you can reach out to me. Once I compile a list of folks that are interested, I'll just send a kind of a group email tomorrow with the webinar information and the registration information. So no cost to the webinars. Basically, we just want to introduce the tool to anyone who potentially could be using it or is interested in how it potentially could affect or influence or improve the work that you do in streams. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. That is all we have today for Tidbits. Thank you, everybody who shared. That was a nice variety of tidbits to have. The only thing that I want to share before we move on is just a reminder to fill out our Symposium feedback survey. If you are going to leave early or staying on for the rest of the day, I'll put the link in the chat again, and we'll share it one more time at the end of the day if you are staying on and want to wait till the end to fill it up. But that really helps us with the planning for next year to have feedback that way. So we're a few minutes early, I guess, but I'm going to pass off to Dan Ranella now to take us into our last presentation block of the day.